I don't want to share my name, but it happened to me just outside Columbus, Ohio, a couple of years back, and I'll say this up front because it still messes with me a little. If she hadn't asked one specific question that night, I probably wouldn't be telling this at all, and I still don't know what she was actually doing in my house. So at the time I was living alone in this small rental house, nothing special, 1-floor unfinished basement, quiet street, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. I was single and using Tinder pretty casually, not looking for anything serious. Just talking to people, maybe grabbing a drink if it felt right, nothing deep. I matched with this girl named Lauren, at least that's what her profile said. Mid-20s, worked in healthcare. Pretty normal pictures, nothing flashy, mostly selfies and scrubs, a mirror pic or two, and one with a dog. She looked real and her messages felt real too. No weird grammar, no copy-paste lines. She complained about night shifts, asked what I did, used emojis in a boring, normal way. Everything about it felt average, in a good way. We talked for a few days and then she asked if I wanted to hang out, either at her place or mine. I suggested coffee first because that's what you say, but she said she was exhausted and just wanted somewhere quiet. So I said she could come over. She said that worked and asked for my address. She said she'd be there around 9. That night, I cleaned more than I usually would. Not because I was nervous, just because I had time. I vacuumed, wiped the counters, took the trash out, and made sure the basement door was shut because it creaks, and I didn't want to deal with that sound later. Around 8:40, she texted that she was on her way by 9:15. She wasn't there yet, which didn't bother me. And then around 9:25, she texted one word, "I'm here." I opened the front door and didn't see anyone, so I stepped onto the porch. Still nothing, and then I heard a car door close down the street. A second later, she came walking up the sidewalk, and it was her same face, same hair, same build, just like the pictures. But right away, something felt off, and I didn't know how to explain it, even to myself. She didn't look around at all, like most people do when they walk up to a stranger's house. She didn't check the number, didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. She walked straight up like she already knew where she was going. She smiled and said, "Hey?" Her voice sounded normal, maybe a little tired. I also said, "Hey," and asked how the drive was, and she just said fine. Nothing else. We went inside. I locked the door out of habit, and we sat on the couch. I offered her something to drink, and she said water was fine. She took one sip, set the glass down, and never touched it again. We talked, but it didn't really feel like a conversation. It felt like I was talking, and she was responding just enough to be polite. Short answers, no follow-up questions. I asked about work. She said it was stressful. I asked which hospital she worked at, and she named one nearby. After about 10 minutes, she asked if she could use the bathroom. I pointed down the hallway, and she got up and walked that way. I heard the bathroom door close and then nothing. No sink, no toilet, no sound at all. After a minute or two, I noticed how quiet it was and figured maybe she was fixing her makeup or just standing there, scrolling her phone. So I sat back down and looked at mine. Then I heard the basement door open. It wasn't loud, just that familiar creak, the one I'd tried to avoid all night. At first, I thought maybe she got confused and went to the wrong door, which didn't make much sense because the bathroom is clearly labeled and right there. But people do weird stuff when they're nervous. So I called out, "Bathroom's the other door." No answer. I got up and walked down the hallway. The bathroom door was still closed. The basement door was cracked open just a little. I stood there for a second, then knocked on the bathroom door and said her name. No response. That's when things started to feel heavy. Not panic, just that slow, uncomfortable feeling like something wasn't lining up. I opened the bathroom door, and it was empty. The light was off like no one had been in there at all. I stood there longer than I should have, just listening, and then I heard footsteps coming up from the basement. Slow, careful, one step at a time. She came up and looked at me like nothing was wrong, smiled a little and said, "Sorry, I just wanted to see what was down there." I said, "Yeah, it's just storage." And that was it. I didn't ask why she went down there, didn't mention the bathroom. I honestly didn't know what to say. We went back to the living room. She sat in the same spot as before, and I noticed her hands shaking just slightly, barely enough to see unless you were paying attention. I asked if she was okay. She said yeah, and then asked if anyone else lived there. I said, no. She asked if anyone ever came over late. I said, sometimes friends. She nodded like she was checking something off in her head. Then she asked if I had a key for the basement. I told her it didn't lock. It was just a door. She paused and said, oh. We sat there for a bit. The TV was on mute, and I don't even remember what was playing. I just remember the light from the screen moving across her face while she stared straight ahead, like she was thinking through something. Then she asked if she could see my bedroom, which felt weird but not unheard of, so after a second, I said sure. I led her down the hall. She stopped at the doorway, didn't step all the way in, just looked around, opened the closet door, looked inside, closed it, and then crouched down and looked under the bed. I laughed a little, trying to keep it light, and said, you checking for monsters or something? She didn't laugh. She stood up and asked, you don't have anyone staying here, right? I said no again. She looked at me for a long second, then smiled and said she had a headache and should probably head out. I didn't argue. I walked her to the door. She took a long time putting her shoes on, way longer than normal, then stood up, looked at me and said, you should lock your doors better. I said okay. She left. I locked the door and watched her walk away from the window, and what stuck with me was that she didn't walk toward where she parked earlier. She went the opposite direction. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I opened Tinder and the match was gone, profile deleted or unmatched. I tried searching her name on Facebook, but nothing that matched. A couple days later, I was cleaning the basement. I don't know why, but I just felt like I needed to. And behind some boxes in the corner, I found a backpack that wasn't mine. Inside it was a phone charger, a small notebook, a cheap flip phone, and a printed Google map of my street with my house circled. No name, no notes, nothing else. I threw it all away. I didn't call the police. I didn't really know what I'd even say. I moved out a few months later as my contract ended. Sometimes I still think about how calm she was the whole time. Not scared, not nervous, just focused like she wasn't there to meet someone. She was there to check something, and I still don't know what she was looking for, or if she found it, or if she was even alone that night. Nothing technically bad happened, which somehow makes it worse because there's nothing to explain and nothing to close it out. Every once in a while I'll think about that backpack and wonder how long it had already been down there before she ever walked through my front door.